Good morning. It is a pleasure to be with you here this morning. I value so much the opportunities and so many memories with many of you and lots of new faces too. It's always exciting to see growth and development of brethren, especially little ones that have grown up. Yes, it has been 20 years since I was here, and that brings about a lot of change for a lot of people. I'm so thankful to be here with you this morning. I just got some thoughts that I want to share with you today that are real simple, real basic. And if you'll turn your Bibles over to Psalm 105, Psalm 105, that's going to be the basis for our thoughts here this morning. Psalm 105, we'll start with verse 1. Oh, give thanks to Yahweh, call upon his name, make known his deeds among the peoples. Sing to him, sing praises to him. Talk of all of his wondrous works, glory in his holy name. Let the hearts of those rejoice who seek Yahweh. Seek Yahweh and his strength, seek his face evermore. Remember his marvelous works which he has done, his wonders and the judgments of his mouth, O seed of Abraham, his servant, you children of Jacob, his chosen ones. There was a survey that I came across once that I thought was interesting. I was surprised to learn that they've actually done studies to explore the lifespan of chronic complainers versus those with a sweet disposition. Ironically enough, complainers seem to actually be the ones that live longer than their counterparts. However, it suggested it merely felt that way for everybody around them. I don't know about that, but I thought that was kind of interesting. I have come to realize that, at least in my own life, that I am very much a creature of habit. And I think most of us probably would feel the same way. Habits, good or bad, we are people who develop them. And I think it's obviously something that we recognize the potential for in creating habits. The problem is that it takes effort and takes some work, and sometimes I just don't want to put the time and effort into things. But I like the words of our psalmist here in our text. Here the writer, he speaks of making a habit out of a very positive thing, and that is making a habit out of gratitude. And that's what I want to talk with you this morning, real basic. There's 3 points that I want to bring out from the text here in Psalm 105. And like I said, it's a very simple idea, simple concept. But as I grow and develop in my own relationship with God and understanding his word, one of the things I've come to realize is how important being grateful is. When you look at Romans chapter 1, you look at Paul's discussion about the descent of the Gentile world. You know, Yahweh calls Abraham and has plans for him, but the rest of the world did not have to descend into the chaos that it descended into, but it did. And in that text, Paul says they forgot the Lord and they weren't thankful. They weren't grateful for what he had done, and which results in the pagan Gentile world that we come to see in certainly by the time of Jesus, when we think about the things that Paul is talking about in his letter. Gratitude is important. A lack of gratitude is no bueno. Bad stuff. But from the positive side of things, I believe that we can develop, just like we develop other habits. Some people develop really good eating habits. I'm definitely one of those. I have developed great eating habits. I eat all the time. It's amazing what you do when you put your mind to it. But I think we recognize that when stuff's important, we find ways to do it, to dedicate ourselves to it. Sometimes things that are important, but we're not big fans of. You know, I have to figure out what day of the month we pay these bills, and figure out what days we go to exercise, or what days we have to do certain responsibilities for work, what have you, family life. There's all sorts of habits that we have to have because we recognize they're important. I want to suggest to you this morning very strongly that gratitude is a habit we should adopt. And so we're going to spend our time here this morning just kind of thinking about this. Real simple, nothing earth-shattering here. The first point I want to look at is found in verse 1, and that is that gratitude must be directed. He says, "Oh, give thanks to Yahweh. It's not enough that we feel thankful for what God has done. That's a good thing, but we need to express it to him. And the same is true of our gratitude towards other people, being grateful towards one another. One of the things that is so frustrating is the narcissism of our culture, where people just take. Now, people have needs, and there are needy people, and we're supposed to lift up the hands of the needy, but there's nothing more frustrating and nothing more deplorable to the first century Jew or Gentile than someone who took and was not grateful. Being ungrateful was a despicable thing in the first century, and it's a despicable thing to God here and now. Should be despicable to us. We don't want to be guilty of being ungrateful. We want to make sure that it's directed to God or to the people in our lives that we have. I remember, and sometimes they still show this, but around Thanksgiving time, there will be a St. Jude commercial that would come on. And it had Robin Williams, who since passed away, and Jennifer Aniston, some high praise people, or highly known people, I should say. And they would be getting on for a totally good cause, saying, in this time, if you've got healthy families, if you've got food on your table, if you've got a roof over your head, be thankful. And I would scream at the television, be thankful to whom? And that's the question that's never asked. We're just thankful to the universe, because the universe, is totally alive and makes these decisions. No! In order to be thankful, to be grateful, you have to direct it to someone. But literally, it's just be thankful to the cosmos, because, that's what you do. I'm not trying to mock them, but I also recognize that people will say things that imply that there is a higher force or standard at work in their lives, and they will go so far as to say, I've got good things. Good things have been given to me. By whom? Well, let's not talk about that. But that's exactly the case. And so when we talk about being grateful, it's got to be directed to somebody. You can say all you want that you're grateful for what you have, but if you do not direct it to God, if you do not direct it to your family, your friends, your bosses, your neighbors, what good does it ultimately do? If we start working on deliberately taking the time to say thank you, good things are going to happen. When parents teach their kids to be grateful, I hope it's not just to be polite. It needs to be something that sponsors within them, that fosters within them a need to see, I have been blessed by someone with something, so I'm going to say thank you. That is a conditioned natural response that, yes, sometimes kids are, thank you. Eventually, that will become a real thing. Eventually, that repetition, as they mature, will develop. Well, guess what? You may feel like you're an old dog, but you can learn that new trick too, of forcing yourself to verbally say, hey, thank you. Thank you for that cup of coffee you brought me. Thank you for making that meal. Thank you for picking up those. There's all sorts of things that are so simple. Thank you for loaning me that equipment, or for helping me financially. Gratitude is something that we have to take the time to direct it. And I'm afraid that in my life, maybe in your life too, that I find myself, I have a feeling of gratitude, but the feeling is all I don't do anything with it. I don't tell God, thank you for this. I don't tell my wife or my children, thank you for this. Because it's expected, or we're too busy. If we're too busy to be grateful, then we're too busy to be doing godly disciple stuff, and that's not good. Godly disciple stuff is what disciples are about. And gratitude certainly is something that should be intrinsic to us. An example of this from a source that we might not think of is over in Daniel chapter 4. Daniel chapter 4. Daniel 4, starting in verse 1. This is Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, probably the most powerful nation on earth at this point, who is saying these things. Nebuchadnezzar the king, to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell on all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I thought it good to declare the signs and wonders that the Most High God has worked for me. How great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. A pagan king who, quite frankly, had a very small concept of Yahweh, the God of everything, understood that I thought it was a good thing to declare what this Most High God's been up to and what he's done for me. Now, Nebuchadnezzar had a huge ego, and he had plenty of problems, and yet I think sometimes I see in him a man who's more grateful maybe than I've been at times in my life. That's probably not good. Good for him, not good for me. We can see that if a pagan king, a guy who does not have near the concept of the Holy One of Israel that a Jew would have, and certainly we as spiritual Jews, what we know about the God of heaven, the Most High God, if he can be grateful, so can we. Look at kids. You listen to them pray, they find everything to pray for. They pray for mommy and for daddy. They pray for their toys. They pray for the dirt that they just played in and probably ate. And they're grateful when they look around the room for stuff, and it doesn't seem strange to them. And as we as adults sometimes are kind of like, all right, here. But it's like if a child can find things to be grateful for, more things than I tend to find time to be grateful for, what's my excuse? Well, you look at that in kids, and sometimes, oh, that's so cute. But let's learn something from that. Let's listen with the ears that Jesus told us, or Jesus mentioned when he told us that kids are what the kingdom of God is made up of. It's not just that it's like kids, that's what kids are. Kids are children of Yahweh that have not yet fallen prey to sin. And although there are things about them that we realize are examples of immaturity, there's plenty of things about them that are examples of kingdom citizens. And that when we become Christians, we are being restored back to what we had before we sinned. That there is so much power in that innocence and that joy of seeing life. God is the source of all the good things that we have. Gratitude for what he has done is also going to kind of weave its way into the lives of the people through which he's done them. I believe strongly that marriages tend to be made or broken by the gratitude shown by the husband and wife for just the daily things that they do. If you spend a lifetime ignoring the little things, they mount up to a huge pile of willful ignorance. But if you spend your life thanking for all the little things, then it's a lifetime of praise and gratitude to someone for the things they've done, the commitment they've made to you. I remember when Nicole and I first got married, we sometimes, we'd say, thank you for this, and one would say, oh, you don't have to thank me for that, and then the other would respond, yes, I do. I want to. I need to. This is just as much for me as it is for you. I need to be grateful. I need to be mindful of how you have served me. Because in being mindful of how she has served me, or I her, I am reminded that because every good thing comes from God, that it is pointing to him. And the good stuff that I've got is because of him. But if I don't take inventory of it, if I just kind of pass it off as, it's not a big deal, it's not even hardly worth mentioning, I develop the habit of overlooking those things, and then I can spend a lifetime of overlooking thousands of opportunities to say thank you to my wife, and ultimately thank you to my king. And I don't want to find myself on Judgment Day having missed the opportunity to praise God for stuff. I don't want to be thinking about Judgment Day and think all those opportunities I could have said thank you, that he made me smile, and I want to make him smile back by having gratitude and by being grateful to my wife and my children and my friends and my brothers and sisters, my employer, my country, my state. There are so many places to be grateful. But if I pass them up and I learn to make a habit out of that, when my life is finally culminates in eternity, even being forgiven by grace and mercy and with God, I don't want to look back with a bunch of regret about the times I could have done more. And I should have just been grateful because I didn't take the time to direct it. Well, maybe I felt it. And certainly there's something to be said for having those feelings. Those feelings are good, but don't stifle them. Don't act as though, well, that's not really enough to bother somebody with. Yes, it is. Bother them with gratitude. Bother God with gratitude. Because that's what disciples do. That's what people who appreciate the God of heaven do. Even Nebuchadnezzar understood that. We can get this, certainly. A second point, when we go back to Psalm 105 in verse 1, he says that gratitude must be declared. He says you need to make it known. And we've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but we are to talk about God's power and might. I love the song, I Sing the Mighty Power of God. It's one of those songs that just bursts off the page with enthusiasm and wonder, looking at what God has done, marveling at it. Kind of the Psalm 8 idea that David presents. I'm looking at your creation. It's amazing. Another thing that children do really well. You tell them there's a possibility of a rainbow, and they're all looking out the window looking for it because they understand that there's something special about that. We lose sight of that because we're adults and we're stupid sometimes. But the truth of the matter is there is great value in taking inventory of these quote-unquote small things. Make it known. Say, look at that. When my kids were little, we talked about the moon a lot. Can't help but go outside and see the moon. And when they're first learning to speak, what is that? Moon. Okay. And then after a while, it's, well, who made that moon? Well, God did. And then after a while, it's, why did God make that moon? Because he loves me. And that may seem simple, but it's absolutely true. God made these things because he loves us, because he wants us to be blessed by them. Yes, they are expressions of his power and creativity, but that's a good thing, because God's power and creativity are the things we delight in if we're paying attention. We draw attention to it. We tell people, hey, you should look at this. You should think about this. Look over in Luke chapter 8 with me. Luke chapter 8. Luke 8, we're going to start with verse 27. This might seem like a bit of a strange story for this, but I think we'll pick up some momentum here. Luke 8, starting verse 27. And when he stepped out on the land, there met him a certain man from the city who had demons for a long time, and he wore no clothes, nor did he live in a house but in the tombs. And when he saw Jesus, he cried out, fell down before him, and with a loud voice said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For he commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man, for it had often seized him. And he was kept under guard, bound with chains and shackles, and he broke the bonds and was driven by the demon into the wilderness. Jesus asked him, saying, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," because many demons had entered him. And they begged him that he would not command them to go out into the abyss. Now a herd of many swine was feeding on the mountains, so they begged him that he would permit them to enter them, and he permitted them. And the demons went out of the man and entered the swine. The herd ran violently down the steep place into the lake and drowned. When those who fed them saw what happened, they fled and told it to the city and the country. Then they went out to see what had happened and came to Jesus, and they found the man from whom the demons had departed, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And they also, who had seen it, told them by what means he who had been demon-possessed was healed. And the whole multitude of the surrounding region of the Gadarenes asked him to depart from them, for they were seized with great fear. And he got in the boat and returned. Now the man from whom the demons had departed begged him that he might be with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your own house and tell what great things God has done for you." And he went his way and proclaimed throughout the whole city the great things that Jesus had done for him. We can't imagine how tormented this man was. I've never been demon-possessed to my knowledge, and to my knowledge, I've never met anybody who's been demon-possessed. But as I read about it in the scriptures and listen to this poor guy, he was strong, but he was strong in a crazy Hulk sort of way, not an under control, not a helpful way. He was out of his mind, it seemed like, and he was tormented horribly. And Jesus comes along and completely changes the situation for this man, like we talked about this morning, being transformed by Christ and by a relationship and connection to him. And now he's sitting there in his right mind, and everybody's scared and kind of find this whole situation to be a little untenable, and so they ask Jesus to leave, and this guy wants to follow him. Why do you think he wants to follow him? He's grateful, he's excited, he's thankful, and Jesus says, I got a better mission for you. I want you to go back and be grateful where you come from. Be grateful at home and in the cities and the country where you live. Tell what God has done for you, and that's exactly what he does. He went and he declared it. My point in this is that we need to be specific. As good as it is and as appropriate as it is sometimes to just be general, whether it's because we're in public and we don't want to make everybody hear a 30-minute prayer, or maybe we're just kind of doing something with our family, but being deliberate, being specific in our gratitude and our prayers to God is very important, and being specific and declarative to each other is important. Let me tell you why I love Jesus. Let me tell you what he has done for me. Be specific. Don't be afraid to sound like some crazy person who's, you meet some folks who are so enthusiastic about God, and sometimes their enthusiasm is based, unfortunately, in some probably false doctrine. But we associate sometimes that super enthusiasm with people who are kind of peddling something that we would not call the gospel. But don't let that dissuade you from thinking that if you are enthusiastic about God, that makes you a crazy person. It does not. It makes you just like this guy whose life was changed, and yet your life is more changed than his, because what he had taken away was the demons and the emotional and physical stuff that went on, but your soul has been saved. You've been straightened out from a problem far worse than his. Is your gratitude, should it be less than that? I think we know the answer to that. Our gratitude, we ought to be free with it. We ought to be declaring, we ought to be specific. Let me tell you what God's done for me. Let me tell you why I believe in him and why I love him. Sometimes we are afraid of testimonials because, again, there are people who tend to use, they call it witnessing sometimes, and kind of a misunderstanding of, I think, what the Bible means by that word. But there's nothing wrong with telling people about what God's done for you. In fact, I think it's wrong not to. It's wrong not to be declarative and specific, because if you won't, who will? Is the world going to declare God's goodness and holiness? If it's not me and you, then who? I think we understand this. Over in Psalm 116, a couple of points there that I want to notice. Psalm 116. Starting with verse 12. What shall I render to Yahweh for all of his benefits toward me? I will take the cup of salvation and call upon the name of Yahweh. I will pay my vows to Yahweh now in the presence of all of his people. Jump down to verse 17. I will offer to you the sacrifice of thanksgiving and will call upon the name of Yahweh. Recognize that the intimacy that the writer is speaking of. I am going to tell everybody about what you've done, and I am going to call upon the name of Yahweh. And there is so much more than just simply God over here. That's not what he's saying. He says, I'll take the oaths that his law said. I will swear by the name of Yahweh. I will make my life by the name of Yahweh. Things that the law expressly stated that they were supposed to do and so oftentimes did not. He says, I'm going to make my life about him. And that when I make promises and when I make covenants and when I commit myself to stuff, I'm going to do it in his name with his approval, things that I know he will approve of and things that will honor him. And I'm going to trust that I'm going to say he will hold me accountable. That if I break this, then God will do something about it. That's what God wanted from Israel. Now we can take that and put this into our modern day. We don't make those sworn statements like they did. Our yes is yes and our no is no, but the concept is still the same. I mean, we wear the name of Christ. We wear the name of our King. And so in living the life of a Christian, we are declaring stuff about him. We're declaring things about what makes him smile, what makes his heart delight, what breaks his heart, what makes him angry. We're declaring things like that, not just in the Lord's Supper, but in living the life of a Christian, someone who wears that name. We're making declarations every day. One of the things that we should be focusing on in our declarative lifestyle is what he has done. Yes, what to stay away from, what the rules are. There are rules. But also gratitude. I will declare what he has done for me. I will tell everybody about the things he has done. Well, our third point back from Psalm 105 is found in verse 5 when he says that gratitude must be deliberate. I've got to remember his marvelous works, verse 5 says. It's not enough to be grateful to someone, you must be grateful for something. And that means we've got to identify what God has done for us. And this is where that old song comes in, Count Your Blessings. It really is an amazing thing to sit down and say, I'm just going to make a list of stuff that I'm grateful for from God. That might be something that we have kids do, right? But again, just because kids do it doesn't mean that we can't learn something from it. Sit down with a list and write out some things that you are grateful for. And write it maybe 3 columns: God, people, things that God has done, and of course God's there done everything good, but maybe God's specific things as you see it, and then things that people have done or are doing that you're grateful for, and then things that you are grateful for, and write that list out and take it to God in prayer. And for the people on there, take it to them and say, hey, I was just thinking the other day about what you mean to me. Thank you. Certainly something spouses should be doing, something we should be showing our children. Hey, mom and dad, they love each other. They don't always agree on every single thing. They have to work through stuff, but they say thank you to each other and they're grateful. And dad's at the table, oh, thank you for this meal, and oh, thank you for picking that up. And mom's, oh, thank you for the hard work you do outside the home or whatever. Finding those sort of things to focus on, we need to show our kids that, not just to teach them an example, because we need to do it first. To develop that, to be deliberate. I want you to notice with me the rest of Psalm, or not the rest, but another portion of Psalm 105. We're going to pick up where we left off there. Psalm 105, verse 7. Psalm 105, verse 7. I want you to notice what the psalmist is doing here. He is Yahweh our God. His judgments are in all the earth. He remembers his covenant forever, the word which he commanded from 1,000 generations, the covenant which he made with Abraham, his oath to Isaac, and confirmed it to Jacob for a statute, to Israel as an everlasting covenant, saying, to you I will give the land of Canaan as the allotment of your inheritance, when they were few in number, indeed very few, and strangers in it. When they went from one nation to another, from one kingdom to another people, he permitted no one to do them wrong. Yes, he rebuked kings for their sake, saying, do not touch my anointed ones and do my prophets no harm. The psalmist is doing what I just mentioned. He's enumerating different things from, in this case, from Israel's past that he was grateful for. when you stop and think about gratitude, does it really ever end? Is there ever a place where we say, I've run out of things to be thankful for? I mean, this is an inexhaustible source, isn't it? When we actually stop and go to the well of blessings, it's inexhaustible. So this is never a case of, well, I don't know what to be thankful for. Then you haven't stopped to think about it for more than 2 seconds. Let's not be lazy. Let's take the challenge and say, I know the devil wants me to focus on everything else. He wants to do what he did to Eve. He comes up to Eve and he asks, is it true that Yahweh said that you can't eat of any of these trees? He lies right off the bat. And she says, no, we can eat of all of them except this one. Oh, that one? Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Let me tell you about that one. That's great. He wants us to focus on things, the one thing that isn't good for us, and say, that proves that God is not good, and have us ignore all the things that are good. That's been his ploy from the very beginning. How can we fight against that? By being so deeply immersed in all of the good that we are drowning in that gratitude, where it's impossible not to tell him, would you get lost? You've got nothing to say to me. That's, I think, the power of this habit, that if we work at it, we will develop it. Just like if we work harder at making the Bible and study of it an important thing, if we work harder at just prayer life in general, if we work harder at being committed to doing good works in our lives for our friends or community, that we can develop those habits. Gratitude will be no different. The only thing is that I think it's probably the easiest habit for us to possibly create, because God has just flooded us with good things. And even the most ungrateful, spiteful people have their lives loaded with good. But once again, I want you to think, if not us, who? If we aren't the ones who are pointing and saying, that's my Jesus, here's what he's done for me, and here's what he'll do for you. Because not only are we wanting to praise God and be thankful, because that's just what love does, we want others to see it and want that too. Because if we are truly grateful to God for our blessings, we are going to be grateful for the blessings he offers to others as well, because that's what it means to love your neighbor as yourself, which the Lord said is kind of important. Love God, love man. So our gratitude is good for us and our relationship with God, but it is so powerful in convicting others that they should seek Jesus too. I don't think there's any good that is more impactful than the joy of a disciple. The joy that we can bestow or that we can project to others in this world of griping and complaining, a world where the survey says the complainers live longer, but it's only because they make everybody think that they live longer because of the griping and complaining. We are going to say, that person may not have lived very long, but the impact they made was impressive. I will always remember my grandfather, Grandpa Boswell, for the gratitude he had in his life. He was always the most grateful person that I have ever known. And it wasn't because he was rich. It wasn't because he had all this stuff. In fact, he did a lot of things and made a lot of sacrifices that made him less rich. But I think about his gratitude towards God and how infectious that was. And that when people talk about him and his spiritual legacy, that's what they talk about. They talk about a man whose faith he wore it on his sleeve. His gratitude was palpable, and that's what I want to be. I think God deserves that from me. I know he does. He deserves that from you too. Well, as we wrap up our thoughts this morning, what role does gratitude play in your heart? As those of us here who have obeyed the gospel, we have the greatest thing to be grateful for, The fact that we have salvation, that we have been saved from our own crimes. Someone else took that beating for us, took that death, and has made it possible for us to live and grow and be grateful, not eternally lost. We've got something to be thankful for, to share with everybody. How is that going in your life? Are you grateful? If you are, we can be more grateful. I think we are grateful. I think very few people, if anybody in this room certainly, is ungrateful. But can we be more grateful? Can we be more declarative? Can we be more direct? I know I can. Join me in trying to do that. If you've not yet obeyed the gospel, the greatest gift is still sitting there. It's right there for you to take, and you can leave here this morning with the gratitude of the ages of eternity, the freedom having been washed from the sins of your life, and being able to say, all those horrible things I have done, I am free of that spiritual debt, and now I can spend the rest of my life looking forward to eternal joy, unending gratitude. And that can be yours today if you would obey the gospel. Jesus said, he that believes and is baptized shall be saved. Are you ready to do that? Are you ready to commit your life and spend the rest of eternity with a glowing, grateful heart for the one who loved you more than you can possibly fathom? If we can help you in some way this morning, why don't you come forward and tell us what that need might be as we stand and sing.